everyone. I'm Michelle Janikian, journalist, writer, and author of Your Psilocybin Mushroom Companion, an informative, easy-to-use guide to understanding magic mushrooms, from tips and tricks to microdosing and psychedelic therapy. I've been into mushrooms for a long time, over 15 years, mostly the psychedelic kind. That was kind of my gateway into other types of mushrooms, big surprise, because they're fascinating, to me anyway. Psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin-containing mushrooms, which there's it's debatable, but as many as like 180 different species that contain psilocybin alone. But they're so interesting to me because there's such a long history. They can create such different experiences for people, such profound, crazy experiences that it's so wild that you can have just from eating, a few grams or a few mushrooms. But I'm here to talk to you guys about safe use because that's my specialty and what this whole book is about. I only have about 10 minutes, but I just want to go through a few of the basics of safe tripping, if we're being honest, with psychedelic mushrooms. And first I want to start with, I'm going to go with dose. So I have a whole chapter in here on dose. It's I wrote this over 2 years ago. Chapter 7, finding the correct dose. And so what I recommend in chapter 7 is starting low, like really low, and going slow and working your way up to more profound dose trips in subsequent experiences, so not like all in one day. So the first thing I have to tell you is that different mushrooms have different strengths. So to give you like a lowdown of grams right now, doesn't really make the most sense. However, what I can say is most folks, if you're growing or buying mushrooms from someone, or, gifting, whatever, no judgment, mushrooms from someone who grows them at home, most likely they're growing Psilocybe cubensis. And so if you have cubensis, which then there's all these different strains, so they can vary in strength again. But my chapter in dose mostly deals with cubensis because they're the most common mushroom that people eat, just for fun or for therapy or whatever. However, since you guys are mushroom people, you might be foraging other types of species, or you might be growing your own signature strains or whatever. So this slight lowdown of grams doesn't apply to all species of mushrooms, essentially. However, we're talking about, in my book, dried Psilocybe cubensis, and I recommend folks start pretty low for their first journey. There's no need to go for a really, really big, strong experience. I don't think for your first time, if you're doing this just alone or with friends, if you have a guide, whatever, you can listen to them, what they think is best. But I recommend folks starting at either a microdose, which would be 0.2 grams, or a low dose, which is 0.5 dried grams, remember, to 1.2 for your first experience. And then you can work your way up. 2 to 3 grams is going to be a little stronger, 3.5 to 5 grams, pretty profound. And people go above that, when they're more experienced, looking for certain things, certain spiritual practices, go even deeper. But then that brings me to my next most important safe tripping advice is think about your set and setting first. And what I mean by that is your set refers to your mindset, just how you're feeling and who you are deep down in your personality. So it's a very wide thing. This concept was come up by Timothy Leary, who was a psychologist at Harvard in the 60s until he got kicked out of Harvard for getting a little too into mushrooms. But and then your setting refers to where you're at, your physical location. And so there's a few things you can do to just prepare your set and setting. And I would also just give them some consideration first. Just you don't have to plan too intensely. Don't be too, you don't have to be too over plan everything, but that's kind of the difference I think between general safe use and more party or these bad experiences you hear people had in college and you're like, whoa, mushrooms are scary. It's like, no, you were just in a really stressful situation on a really profound substance. So what I recommend in the book is give it some thought, and I have all these recommendations of different things that people do through like interviews I did as a journalist with different mushroom, both experts and just regular folks who use mushrooms, in the course of their lives. But a lot of people like really chill environment, and that's what I also personally like. I love being in nature. If you can find, but that's also like you want to find a really comfortable, safe place to have this experience, because it is going to last from like 4 to 8 hours depending on the person and your body chemistry, how much you've eaten, those kinds of things. I also don't really like being around any strangers. It's like really overwhelming and increases my anxiety. It's not like smoking a joint in the park where it's kind of chill. Like for me, I'm going pretty deep. So I personally, like my ideal setting is like a comfortable campground or cabin or hotel room, even with like a beautiful view of nature or the ocean. That's like really special, maybe once a year or something. But yeah, finding a place that you're comfortable, that is really beautiful, can be really nice, but actually the being comfortable is the most important thing. So I think a lot of folks for their first journey, doing it at home, especially I feel like Australia, you guys have so much beautiful landscapes and stuff. You have a little backyard, you can just like look at the trees or at the night sky or whatever. But a lot of folks like to do it like at night at home. They won't be interrupted, and they can just really go deep until they're more, and then like when you're more experienced and you kind of know how the mushrooms feel in your mind and your body, you might be ready to take them on a little vacation in a moderate dose with like your best friend or your partner or by yourself for a really special, sometimes spiritual experience. I also want to talk about, like, I don't even know how to say this, how to trip, or like how to deal maybe when it gets kind of overwhelming and scary. A mushroom trip, like I said earlier, 4 to 6 hours generally. Sometimes you're still feeling a little funky at hour 8 or things like that. But it has kind of like an arc to it, almost like a novel, right? And so when it starts and you're just starting to feel a little different, you can feel kind of nauseous. And this I think is the hardest part, which I like to warn people, the come up. I feel kind of gross. I kind of feel terrible and scared most come ups. Like, why do I do this? I feel so horrible. And then after that only lasts about an hour, sometimes 2, it depends. And I feel like then I kind of arrive. Some people call that the peak. I don't know if that's, for me, I kind of get over the come up and plateau a bit. And then I kind of feel like, oh, I'm here. And then I can really just start exploring, just thinking about things in a new way, and myself and my life, where I'm at, or the beautiful place I'm in, or the partner I'm with. And then, there's that kind of a peak, and then you slowly come down. So if you feels really terrible in the first hour, just know that's kind of normal. And I have a whole chapter in my book on how to deal with challenging experiences. And those I do feel like is usually happening in the beginning. And, it's a lot of like the kinds of things you learn to deal with anger or anxiety, like in therapy, like breathe. Count to 10. If you're a meditator, you might want to try a little meditation, taking your shoes off, putting your bare feet on the ground, to ground you, to just make you feel like that you're not that you're in control, because you're not. The mushrooms are in control. That's another important thing to remember. But just to remember that, you can do this. It can be scary. It can be hard. You can look at yourself in a way that you haven't before, and that's kind of dark and not what you thought it would be. I think that's a lot of it, is people's expectations are quite different than what happens. But the key is just like accept what's coming. You can't control the mushroom experience. You can prepare yourself. You can read my book. You can do more research. I definitely recommend doing more research and reading about the type of mushroom you're going to eat. But the best thing you can do is, once you're all prepared and you eat the mushrooms, is to just relax and and to know, to accept the mushrooms and whatever they bring you, and to know that they're in charge, but they're watching out for you, they're looking out for you, they're giving you something that they think you need. And I think you should trust them. You can set intentions and all those kind of things that I'm sure you start to read about online. In my book, I recommend my usual intention is to just to listen to the mushroom. I say, teach me, I'm listening, because I do trust the mushroom, and I want to know what they think I need to learn this trip, rather than trying to like direct it really stiff and be like, oh, I need to work on all these things. Like, no, I think those things naturally come up, and you can learn a lot. There's other tips like this in my book, and a whole chapter on integration, which is like taking the lessons you've learned from mushroom experiences and starting to incorporate into your life. There's a lot of ways you can do that. There's a lot of other stuff on psychedelic therapy and guided experiences, how to vet guides and decide what kind of experience is right for you all. In this little book that I wrote in 2019, Your Psilocybin Mushroom Companion, it's available in Australia on Amazon for sure, and possibly at your local bookstore, especially if you request it. Yeah, that's all. I'm Michelle Janikian. I also have a website, michellejanikian.com, and I'm on Instagram most actively at michelle.janikian. Thanks so much, everyone. Much love, Australia. Bye.